jump into it. So like I said before, today we're talking about boosting efficiency with Anypoint Code Builder and AI. And this is a high-level overview. What is Anypoint Code Builder? Anypoint Code Builder is MuleSoft's next-generation IDE to design and implement and deploy APIs and integrations from a single environment. And our vision for Anypoint Code Builder is to give users this modern and lightweight developer experience through a unified IDE. And there are a couple things that we're doing to kind of support this. First one is we are building our IDE from the ground up on Visual Studio Code. And this is super important. This is kind of where all developers are currently working out of right now. And this also gives us the ability to offer Anypoint Code Builder both in the cloud and on desktop, which is super cool. Among some other things like extensions and snippets, which is just powerful infrastructure to build our IDE on top of. Second, we are kind of consolidating the developer experience. We are combining the design aspects with implementation and the actual deployment and testing and debugging of your integrations and APIs. Again, kind of just making a one-stop shop for all the development needs that you have. And finally, what we're here to talk about today, we are introducing the power of AI to MuleSoft development to help developers jumpstart their projects with natural language. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's kind of dive into some of the fundamentals that we thought of as we went through implementing generative AI into Anypoint Code Builder. The first thing is, there's been a lot of buzz about generative AI, but with kind of the hype also comes a lot of responsibility and concerns about security. And this is something that's top of mind for us. We want to truly build an experience for customers that they can trust in. And trust is a huge part of Salesforce as well. And that's why through Einstein, we are able to harness the power of generative AI to really empower MuleSoft developers. And our goal is to use it as a grounded, secure mechanism to help our developers become more productive and more efficient. And to truly do this, we are focusing on 4 core pillars to guide the process. So the first one, our goal is to make our users more productive. We want to focus on high complexity use cases and really personalize the experience so that it's really easy to get started and you're in an environment that you're familiar with. Secondly, we really do want to keep true to the promise to focus on trust. We do this by setting high confidence thresholds for our models to ensure the generated content is accurate and reliable. Third, we are committed to going beyond just the initial hype of generative AI. And we want to make sure that what we're building, I'm hoping the slides are moving. Are we on?
Yeah, I can see the slides.
Awesome.
Lots of technical issues this morning.
Cool. Just I couldn't speak before, so I'm just double checking. But third, again, we're going beyond the hype. We don't want to just make something in the moment, but we do want something that will provide long-term value for customers and really meet their needs. And then finally, we are building a unified approach that meets you where you work. So whether you're using cloud or desktop, you'll always have access to our resources. So let's talk about how this is actually going to be showing up. One of the things, or 2 of the ways to actually develop in Code Builder, I'm sure you're familiar with at this point. I've talked about it enough, I'm sure. But we have the kind of low code and pro code approach. Low code, you have the canvas. You can build using the UI really easily and using clicks. It makes it really easy to take this low code approach to integration development. And on the flip side of that, we have the pro code approach. We have a pane completely dedicated to the XML where you can jump in and edit the XML directly. Now with Einstein for Anypoint Code Builder, we're offering a third option with prompts. Prompts with Einstein will allow you to use natural language to describe your use case, and Einstein will jump into action and actually generate the code for you. And this is really cool because not only does Einstein generate that code, but he's also going to take into account the business logic behind that. He's going to take into account the different components that you're going to need, including pre-bundled connectors, and slowly connectors from Exchange as well. So really powerful functionality, really helping you accelerate your development speed. And we're happy to announce that Einstein for Anypoint Code Builder will be available as a closed pilot when we GA Anypoint Code Builder. So October 16th, when Anypoint Code Builder goes out, the closed pilot will kick off. All right, so let me pass it off to Mofi, and she can show you a little bit more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rohan. I will start sharing my screen. Hopefully I don't face any technical difficulties while doing this. Okay, can folks see my screen? Awesome, okay. So as Rohan mentioned, I'll be giving a demo of how we're leveraging the power of AI within Anypoint Code Builder, but just to give an overview of all the different components that I'll show through this demo. First, obviously, we'll give the spotlight to Einstein and its generative capabilities, before also showing how we can configure snippets in VS Code so that we can develop more quickly. And lastly, showing you folks how to use secure or encrypted properties in your applications. So let's get started. When I go to Anypoint Code Builder for desktop, I see a couple of things. Obviously, in front of me now, I see this welcome screen that has 3 user journeys that Rohan just mentioned, being able to design an API in RAML or OAS, implementing an API, developing an integration. If I go to one of the projects that I have already, I see the 2 different modes of development that Rohan hinted at. We have the canvas on the left, which enables you to add components to your XML, to your project, and will soon also enable the capability to configure the different components directly within the UI. So I'm going to add a right component here. But we also have the XML on the right, which enables you to edit directly. And so for now, I can finish configuring this. And I'm all set to go. But we recognize that it can be hard starting a project. Getting started can be incredibly difficult when you don't know what to do or you're just staring at a blank screen. And so what we wanted to add on top of that is the ability to start with AI. So when you now go to Anypoint Code Builder, you'll see 2 different ways to start. You can either start with AI, as I mentioned, or start from scratch. And by choosing to start from scratch, or start with AI rather, you'll see this new window pane launch on the right, which hosts the interface in which you can easily engage with Einstein. Oh, can folks hear me?
Yeah, there's, I think, some background noise.
Oh, okay. I think it's my radiator. Let me just go turn that off so that it's easier for me folks to hear me. Apologies for that.
And I'll hop back on camera. I did see some questions in the chat, so just wanted to address those. So Anypoint Code Builder for desktop. So for the local version of Visual Studio Code will be available, or will GA on October 16th, just for transparency.
Awesome. Sorry about that, folks, and hope the audio is now better.
Yeah, it's definitely better now.
Okay, awesome. Super cool. The weather is getting colder here in San Francisco, but clearly my radiator needs some work. But as I was mentioning, when you choose to start with AI, this new window pane launches on the right, which hosts the experience in which you can easily engage with Einstein. And Einstein is just the ultimate tool through which you can get started quickly and build fast. So what I'm going to do here, suppose I'm working on a project, simple file integration use case that reads account data from a CSV file and then creates them into Salesforce. And I'm not quite sure where to get started in building my actual flow. So by turning to Einstein, I can simply ask the prompt at the bottom of the window pane. So let me do so now. And as I send the request to Einstein for this flow, I also see the real-time updates in the canvas about the fact that Einstein is currently composing and will soon have a response for me. So let's give that a second. And you see that Einstein has now generated the flow. And there are a couple of different components here. Obviously, we have the code sample up top, which is the flow that Einstein has generated for us. But it also comes with an explanation below that details exactly what the flow does. So for any new users, you can also get up to speed with the different components and how to use them moving forward. Awesome. So now that I've reviewed my flow, I can give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. And this feedback is critical for us because it lets us know how well Einstein is performing on your different use cases, and also gives us insight into what things that we might want to improve moving forward. So I reviewed this code sample, it seems to do exactly what I want, so I'm going to give it a thumbs up. And then I will also insert it into my project. And I'll draw your attention to the bottom right where you see a bunch of different notifications that just popped up. And these notifications tell me that the dependencies for the operations or components that I have within my flow have already been added to my project for me. And we did this because we wanted to make it super easy to implement not only Einstein-generated flows but also flows from other places, so that you can quickly get developing and don't need to go through the process of adding the dependencies for the different components as you use them. Awesome. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just close out of the Einstein tab, and then I will also make a change to the data we've transformed so that it just has all the components or the fields that I have within my file. Okay. And then lastly, I want this flow to be triggered when a call is made to an endpoint. So I'm just going to add that trigger at the beginning. And I will like it to be triggered when I call the upload path. And now we have a completed flow. But obviously I need to tell my application, hey, what's the Salesforce instance in which I'm going to be inputting these records? What's the directory that hosts the file where I'm reading the CSV file? And I can easily get started by doing so using secure properties and snippets. So starting with secure properties, what secure properties enable us to do is to quickly and easily encrypt our credentials so that the critical credentials aren't visible within my projects. And to go over how to first encrypt those properties, I'm going to just give you folks a view of the ACB website, or the documentation website. And here we have the end-to-end journey of how to encrypt and decrypt using the MuleSoft security properties tool, which is simply a package or a jar that you can run against the properties that you want to encrypt to generate these encrypted properties. So I can download the secure properties tool by simply clicking on this link here. But since I already have it, I'm just going to navigate to the directory where the secure property tool lives. And I can see it on my screen here. And what I want to encrypt for the purposes of this demonstration, I want to encrypt the value ABC, and I can copy the command from the documentation website. And you see that I have the ABCs of ACB down here, which is the value that I want to encrypt. And then I have the key, my encryption key up here, ACB AI webinar. Obviously, for development use cases, we want these to be a bit more robust, but just to show kind of how it works, I'll use those. And then I receive the encrypted value. And these are the values that I will be putting into my project. Awesome. So now navigating back to my project, I have my encryption values and I know how to get them, but how can I actually use them? And we can use them by creating a secure properties file or a YAML file within my project that hosts these encrypted values. So first I'm going to create such a file by going to the resources directly within my project, clicking to add a new folder, and then I will call it dev.secure.yaml. This is the typical nomenclature that we have for these files, where dev indicates the environment in which these credentials are used, and we typically have one for staging and prod as well. Okay, so I have my dev.secure.yaml file, and then I'm going to copy over the Salesforce credentials that I previously encrypted right into this file. Super cool. So now that I have the encrypted values in the file, I need to tell the Mule runtime how to use the encrypted values. And I can do so by navigating to settings. And once I go to settings, I'm going to search for runtime. And at the end here is where I'll put the encryption key that can be used to decrypt these values when my application is run. Again, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm not going to show you the exact encryption key for security, but this is the field in which you'll be inputting that key. Okay, awesome. So I have my encrypted properties within my application, my project, and I also have the encryption key configured within my VS Code instance, which tells my application, hey, this is the key that we want to use when my applications are run locally. So I can now go ahead and start finishing the configuration of my application. So to start, I'm going to add in the secure properties configuration, which tells my application which secure properties file it wants to read from. And again, note that the dependencies to support this have automatically been added to my project. So I'm going to just change this file. And then I'll add the configuration that triggers the endpoint. And I can do so using snippets. Snippets are the built-in or customizable pieces of code that developers can use when building their projects. And this makes it really easy to develop without having to type the same lines of code over and over again. So I just inserted the built-in snippet for configuring your HTTP listener. I will also insert a snippet for configuring my file. And then lastly, I'm going to insert the snippet for configuring the connection to Salesforce. And just to give a view of where snippets live, when you launch the command line within your VS Code instance, so on Mac, you can do so by pressing Command-Shift-P, on Windows, Control-Shift-P. When you can type in snippets in the top, and you'll see this option to configure user snippets. I'm going to configure an XML.json snippet, so this will be compatible with my Anypoint Code Builder projects. And then I can see all the different snippets that I've both added previously, I can see all the different snippets that I've already added to my project. And this is where I can make the additions of any new ones that I think will be more helpful for me to have in the future. For instance, I wanted to have a secure Salesforce configuration every single time that I built integrations with Salesforce. So I simply put the snippet in here so that I can continue to reuse it without making any changes or having to retype that configuration over and over again. Okay, super cool. So now that we have all of the different components within my project, you'll also see that the errors that initially existed here have all went away since everything is nice and configured. And I'm going to go ahead and run my application. So I'm running my application locally, which enables me to very quickly test. And while the application is deploying, I'm going to kind of show you guys the records that I'm hoping to insert into my Salesforce org. So on the left here is all the different account records that I'm hoping to insert. And on the right, I have my Salesforce instance and the current list of accounts. Okay, navigating back to VS Code, I see that the application is now deployed. So I'm going to test it by hitting that endpoint that we just configured. So the endpoint is upload right within VS Code, by leveraging the power of the extensions within VS Code, I can easily send a request. So I'm going to create a new request. Actually, let me just use one that I already have. So I'm going to send this new request with using these API client right in VS Code. And I realized that I hadn't yet updated the CSV file, the path to the CSV file, or where that's going to be read. So I'm going to quickly fix that before moving forward. Now I'm going to run this once more. Also, while we're waiting for that to rerun, want to just show you guys a couple of more cool features that you get with Einstein. So to make it really easy to go back and forth between the Einstein window pane, we've also added a shortcut right up top in this header. And that makes it really easy to relaunch the window pane during your development process. On top of that, we've also had it in history. So the history is where you'll see all the different prompts that you've sent to Einstein within that single project. So if you wanted to go back to a prompt that you've sent previously, you can simply navigate to your history and click on it here without having to resend it to Einstein. Okay, so I've seen the application is now redeployed. So I'm going to try that one more time and send the request. Awesome. And when I go to my Salesforce org and just give it a refresh, I now see all the different account records that I just uploaded into my Salesforce instance. And I did so using the power of Einstein to get me started and really jumpstart my development process with secure properties, which enabled me to create to use secure credentials within my applications. And lastly, by leveraging the power of snippets, which are the reusable pieces of code that you can quickly use when developing so that you don't have to type the same lines of code. Okay, super cool. So now that we've run through the demo of how Einstein snippets and secure properties all work together, I'm going to kind of give you guys some insight into some of the things that are happening behind the scenes and how Einstein actually works. So it starts with the engine, LLMs. For folks who are familiar with generative AI features, LLMs are at the heart of any generative capability, and it really gives the ability to transform things from unstructured to structured formats. And there are a number of different large language models that we have available to us. We have the ones within Salesforce, we have OpenAI, etc. And for the Einstein for Anypoint Code Builder feature, we're leveraging the power of one of OpenAI's models, GPT. The next pillar is Einstein. Einstein is our trust layer. As Rohan mentioned, we wanted to make sure that folks felt comfortable and safe and secure when using AI features. And we did that by leveraging the capabilities of Einstein. And this trust layer enables us to create secure connections with external and internal models, as well as have the shared trust boundary that makes sure that all your data is exactly the right place. So to give a bit of insight into it and how the trust layer works, obviously it starts in Anypoint Code Builder, where the user is typing in the prompt or the user input that they want to generate. And once the user types in the prompt, we do some grounding using MuleSoft proprietary data. And this gives the LLM the context it needs to generate more reliable, accurate responses. Then we send that prompt through the Einstein gateway to OpenAI, which is the external model that we have a shared trust boundary with. And this means that no data that we send to OpenAI is retained with that vendor. We wanted to make sure that the data stayed all within the Salesforce ecosystem. And so for that reason, we have this trust agreement with OpenAI where no data will be stored on their side. Then once the LLM generates a response, it sends it back through the secure gateway, and then we do a validity check, what folks may call a sanity check. And this just makes sure that the sample actually works with the Mule ecosystem. And then we do some logging on our side of the prompt and responses, which enables features like the history tab, but also allows us to make sure that the feature is being used properly. And then lastly, the validated responses are surfaced in Anypoint Code Builder back to that integration developer. And with that, we're able to build on top of large language models using the Einstein trust layer and create rich, engaging generative experiences within Anypoint Code Builder. Again, Einstein for Anypoint Code Builder is something that we'll be piloting in 2 weeks when when Anypoint Code Builder for desktop goes live, and it really enables folks to get started more quickly, to reduce the time to value and increase productivity by unblocking developers right within their work stream. Coming soon, obviously, I know there's a lot of excitement around generative AI features, so I wanted to show you folks some of the things that are on the roadmap. We have a number of different iterations of generative flows, and in each we're just going to get better and better. So we're starting with the pilot, where we've done optimizations to increase the quality of responses for a few base connectors. And then in our beta, we're continuing to increase the quality of responses for flows that include NetSuite, SAP, and other different systems. And then lastly, when we GA, we recognize that customer data is something that a lot of folks are interested in using to train their own tenant-specific models. And so we'll enable you folks to have personalized responses and generations based on the data that's within your projects. And then after tackling generative flows or flow generation within the Anypoint Code Builder ecosystem, we'll then move on to data weave. Data weave is something that we've heard a lot of and just about with respect to AI. And so we want to now then tackle being able to generate data weave mappings and transformations, both simple and complex. And in terms of how to get involved with the closed pilot for Einstein, if any of you folks are interested, please reach out to your account team or your customer support manager, and they will kick off the pilot nomination process. And once we've done the pilot nomination process, we'll introduce the pilot and how to get started and engage with us through it. Then we will go through setup, make sure that everything is set up well using our detailed setup guide. And then lastly, the most critical part for us is just getting all your feedback. So we'll have 2 methods of feedback, largely async via Slack, and then we'll also set up one more follow-up meeting towards the end of the pilot to get more detailed qualitative feedback. And that's kind of how the pilot process will run. But again, it all starts with starting the pilot nomination process. Okay. And now I'm going to hand it back to Rohan to kind of wrap us up.
Awesome. Thank you, Mofi. I think there are a couple questions we want to address, but I'll go through the roadmap first before we get there. So as you mentioned before, Anypoint Code Builder for desktop is GAing on October 16th. And what Mofi just showed us, we'll be releasing as a pilot. Again, it's a closed pilot, so if you do want to get involved, reach out to your account team, and they'll kind of set up that nomination for you to get you into that process to play around with Einstein. But looking a little forward, what do we have coming up? We have the actual beta for generative flows. This will include just additional support for connectors from Exchange. We're also going to be introducing configuration to the GUI. I think that was one of the questions that was asked. What are some of the gaps between Studio and Code Builder? We're addressing one of them here by allowing you to actually configure through the UI. So right now you can add components. Now you'll be on February. Looking a little further out to the first half of FY24, we're going to have the actual GA of the cloud version. So we're GAing the desktop version in October. We're GAing cloud first half of next year. We also have support for MUnit coming out. I know that's been one of the big asks from customers. So that'll be hopefully there sooner than later. And then other big thing that we're doing is the data weave expression builder. So giving you a GUI to easily kind of configure data weave expressions. So lots to be excited for with the roadmap. The team's working really hard to get out to GA and beyond, and we're super excited to have you all along on this journey. So let me actually, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
I think it's just the overview thing. Yeah, cool. All right. So one of the questions that I think we wanted to address live to Mofi was, so is Einstein more in tune to Mule UCs than using ChatGPT?
Yes. So the short answer is yes, because we recognize that we want it to be better than ChatGPT, and thankfully we have the information and expertise of the entire Mule ecosystem internally at our hands. Because it's not sufficient to just offer the same experience as ChatGPT, we wanted to go beyond that. And so some of the things we did, which I showed in an earlier slide, was around using MuleSoft proprietary data to ground generate the prompts that are sent to ChatGPT or GPT before any of the prompts or responses are generated. And then on top of that, we have that validity check. So we don't want to surface code that's not usable. That's like the biggest thing. If it's not going to work within the Mule ecosystem, we don't want to surface it. And so by adding that validity check, we also add or safeguard some of the responses that are coming from the model. And so that's kind of our twofold approach of going beyond what GPT offers.
Awesome. Thank you.
I will add also that like when we did do some of the benchmark testing with our machine learning engineering team, and the performance over GPT when we went through our prompt engineering and augmenting approach was almost twice, 3 times the quality of responses coming from GPT, just sending responses directly to them. So I think that's the indicator of the value of using this tool as opposed to just using or going directly to GPT.
And the one that keeps, I guess, has come up is the trust principles that Salesforce is using. And I can actually take this one. We are following the same trust principles. The prompts that you're actually inputting aren't going to be inputted into ChatGPT. It's not going to learn off of what you're doing. But Mofi, if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, I think I'll also navigate back to that architecture slide that I had, because I think this is the essence of why Einstein is so powerful. Like trust is truly our #1 priority, and I know that you folks may hear that a lot, but that's at the forefront of our minds when we go about building new features. And we recognize with LLMs, one of the biggest open questions was, I don't want my data to be sent or stored on the OpenAI or the third-party LLM provider. And on top of that, I don't want them to use that data to train their models and that other people will use. And so we attack that twofold by just ensuring that no data is retained in OpenAI. And then secondly, when we do start using customer data, those are for tenant-specific models as opposed to a general model that everyone uses.
Cool. And can you toggle back to the steps to get signed up for the pilot program?
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, it kind of starts with the introduction before we will work with your account team or your customer support manager to kick off the nomination process and sign the pilot contract. And then once that happens, you'll kind of get the introduction to the product team and the feature, and then all the details that you need to get set up and start using Einstein for Anypoint Code Builder. But yes, the first point of contact will be the account team or your customer support manager.
Cool.
I think I also saw an earlier question around generating unit tests. I think it's something that we're thinking a lot about within the context of AI and also without AI, because I think there's a lot of information within the ecosystem or tools that we can leverage to generate those unit tests. So just want to say that it's something that we're thinking about, and obviously unit test support is coming soon to Anypoint Code Builder, and then after that, the ability to generate tests within the platform as well.
Awesome. One of the questions also that came up was using Gen AI for API specifications, when you generate API specifications. There was a conversation back and forth, so I think it was a little interesting on how valuable would that be for community members or for users to actually be able to do that. We've put it lower on the list, but there's always room. If that's something you guys feel is valuable, definitely let us know, because we can reprioritize things if needed.
Yeah, to Rohan's point, the team has done some explorations with generating API specifications for endpoints that already exist. And we're also thinking a lot about how to also generate documentation for APIs, but would, as Rohan mentioned, just love any feedback with regards to that. We saw the two most critical problems that folks face while developing as being the getting started and then working with data and everything data weave. And so I've prioritized those initiatives first before we'll hit some around unit test generation, documentation for APIs, API specs, etc. But yeah, just would love to get any and all feedback.
Cool. All right. Any last minute questions? Not seeing any more, but if you do have a burning question, now is the time.
Okay. And then lastly, I saw some different questions around pricing, packaging. And I know Simone thankfully already addressed them, but just want to address them to the group. Einstein for Anypoint Code Builder will be initially closed pilot, so you'll have to go through this process before the features turned on for you. It's not, it doesn't have a separate SKU. It's packaged as part of Anypoint Code Builder, and so it's just bundled within your subscription. You'll have to be an Anypoint base subscriber to have access to it, and then obviously go through the pilot process. But beyond that, there aren't any other steps or requirements.
Someone's mentioning Rhino AI generating Mule code. I haven't heard about this. I clicked on the link. I do see MuleSoft listed there, but that's something to look into, I guess. Interesting.
Yeah, we're keeping our eye on the space and what vendors are doing. Obviously, we're biased towards what we're doing internally because we have the data and the expertise of the Mule ecosystem to really build great generative products. But thank you for sharing. And as Rohan mentioned, we'll definitely take a look at it.
There's another question about composite connectors. Is it supported by? Okay. Yeah.
So what we've done to start is that we've focused on improving the generations for a few small set of connectors, being Salesforce, HTTP, DB, and email. It's not to say that the composites connector is not supported, but the work hasn't yet been done to really take it from what OpenAI provides out the box and provide better generations.
And there's one last question from Michael on an Anypoint partner tenant. Not familiar with that, but as long as you should have access to it currently if you are using it, if you're using the partner tenant. If you don't see it there, that might just be a follow-up conversation with us to figure out exactly what you're using. So happy to open up a broader conversation on that, Michael. So ACB batch connector is still in progress as part of October GA. Would that be ready? That might be one for Simone.
Yes, Robin will follow up. I think I'm missing some I'm having some trouble understanding some of the context around this question, but we'll follow up on what exactly that means.
Cool. All right. And I think a recording becomes available, sent to you potentially after the meetup is done. Monique?
Yeah,
Keep me
that's right. I think within 24 hours you should see the recording on the event page. So feel free to come back after 24 hours, and feel free to share that one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I think nice to see people are excited. But I think we are going to wrap up for now. As a reminder, this is part 2 of the series. We have part 3 next week. And one other thing that we're gonna, do soon. It's a little teaser here. We will be having some sort of launch party event on the 16th. So more details will come out soon, and we're kind of putting it together, but we're hoping to get everyone engaged and excited. And for GA, we want everyone to come in and have a little personal experience for you all. So actually pay attention, because it's going to be a little quiz that we're going to be doing on everything we're learning in these past 3 weeks. So really testing your knowledge on the ABCs of ACB. So definitely join us next week to dive into connecting systems, Anypoint Code Builder. Simone will be there, kind of leading the charge on that. We want to thank you so much for joining us here today. We appreciate your time, and we hope you're excited as we are. Yeah, Simone's no longer going to be a ninja as.
Yeah, that's true. Next event, we'll make sure she's live on the screen there. And I sent a link to the our next event, guys. So it is live now. You should receive an email for RSVPing that. Please do so. Please share that one so we can get everyone again next week here and continue the saga of ACB.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.